Welcome to the back of the band room. My name is Trey Cross, and today I have a very special guest, Mr. Neil Grover. This is the man behind the triangles and the tambourines and the snare drums and so many wonderful YouTube videos explaining the techniques for those instruments. So let me bring him in here.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi. What do I have to do? Video. Start video.
Start video.
Here we go.
Here
Hi,
we are.
for you.
The happiest guy in town, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's a little chilly today here in Boston, but I'm doing well.
What's the temperature?
What's that?
What is the temperature there?
About 25. That's not bad. It's not too terrible.
Yeah, well, it's, I think, 73 here.
Oh, you're killing me.
You jealous?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I definitely am. Good.
Well, the problem with Florida is you wake up and it's 55, and then by noon it's 78.
Real problem is in August.
Yeah.
When it's a nice 70 degrees here. You guys are hot. So I got your email with some similar questions, and I've given it a little thought, and I appreciate you including me in this video series.
Cool. So let's get into it, man. Why drums?
Why drums? That's a really good question. Well, my dad's a jazz, sax, reed, piano conductor. So my parents, when I was very young, wanted me to take piano lessons, and I didn't last too long at that. I didn't take to it right away. But my dad had a big band in New York, and the drummer was my uncle. And I always liked what he was doing, and I'd sit next to him, and I always wanted to take the drums. I was just attracted to it. Around 1963, 64, I started in 1964 taking lessons. I had seen the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, like a lot of my generation, and immediately said, I'm going to be a musician. That's it. I want to be Ringo. And that really got me hooked after seeing something about the Beatles, their new sound and the look, and the girls going crazy, of course. And it just said, this is the life for me. So that kind of started my drum lessons at 9 years old.
Yeah, cool. And you're one of three people I can think of off the top of my head that mentioned that Ed Sullivan thing. Like that was the thing that got you into it.
Yeah.
I feel like there's less of that now with my students. Why did you pick drums? I'm not sure.
I have to realize back in 1964, we had three channels of TV where I grew up. There was three networks: ABC, NBC, and CBS. And on Sunday night, I think it was 8 o'clock, everybody in the country was watching Ed Sullivan. And Ed Sullivan show was really the last vestige of the vaudeville. In other words, it was a variety show with a lot of different kinds of acts. I equate it to like a smorgasbord, a musical smorgasbord, where there's a little eat. Nothing's really filling, but there's a lot of little things. And, they'd have a ballet dancer for grandma, and then they'd have a ventriloquist act and a circus act and trained dogs. And then they'd always have something, as Ed Sullivan said, for the young people, And they'd have the Rolling Stone, the newest act, Elvis, whatever. And so every kid in the country was watching Ed Sullivan when the Beatles hit. They were already huge. The records had come over. Sound was so different and so fresh and so cool. So I'm not surprised that a lot of us in my generation, I'm pushing 70, saw that and either played guitar, drums, bass, or keyboard. Wanted to be in bands. It was a good thing.
And it's very different now.
Yeah, it's all fragmented now. It's kind of like decentralized. I think of decentralized currency like Bitcoin, and I'm very interested in that whole movement. Everything was centralized to three networks or a couple of shows. So it's much more difficult now to move large masses of people. Mm-hmm. All watching. None of us are watching the same thing at the same time. But back then there was, and also this was before DJs. If you wanted to We didn't have Walkman. We didn't have iPad. You know, to listen to music, you'd have to get a piece of vinyl and put it on a mechanically rotating device called the turntable and put a needle down. So to make music live and to be part of a band as a kid was just like the coolest thing you could imagine. I mean, and I was in a lot of different bands in junior high and high school. We played all the dances and at the school, at churches, at synagogues, and in high school, I played in the bands that did weddings and bar mitzvahs. I got paid better than my friends flipping burgers, and I got to learn how to be a musician on the job. So
Yeah.
there were great times. It was really a good time to go into music.
Are are you Jewish, or were you just going where they go? Oh, you are.
Yes.
Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a little early this year, but it's yeah, no, it's I grew up on Long Island in New York and knew a lot of bar mitzvahs going on, at the time, and this was in 19 I was 15 and I'm playing 1970, 71, making $40 a gig for a 4-hour gig, which was when you think my friends were working in McDonald's for $1 an hour. And I was doing 4 gigs on a weekend, had $160. So I was like rich.
Hmm.
More importantly, I got to play with a lot of older musicians and learned what to do, what not to do. I had a couple of tough band leaders that kind of straightened me out quick. My dad, who I played with many times, it's nothing like playing a gig and driving home with your father at 1 in the morning and being, getting a lesson on the way home in the car when you're exhausted. But it was good training. It's good training.
What kind of things did you learn not to do?
Well, one of the things I learned was not to save my buddy Rich licks and don't on when people are trying to dance, not to play busy, that it wasn't about me. I'm in the back, I'm the drums, I'm supporting the bass, and not to overplay. That was a hard lesson for me to learn because I think my ego was a little strong at that time, and I was young and raring to go, and the hormones were raging, and I'm a young drummer, and I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna set the world on fire. And then you get to a gig and say, "Hey, kid, cool it."
Hmm.
So
And one of my favorite records is Ellen Lilly, and it's Buddy Rich on drums, and you wouldn't even know it. I mean,
I
he's
know.
so
Well, he was a master brush player also.
yes.
I was a teenager. I saw him as many times as I could, many times. And, he was very tasteful when he wanted to be. He had a huge ego and he could really wipe you out. I mean, his technique and chops and endurance and was unbelievable. But he could also be, he played with the Dorsey band. He used to room with he and Frank Sinatra were roommates. He could play very sensitively when he wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, have you ever heard the album? Well, I think there were three, but these albums he put out where he's singing.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh my
This
gosh.
video of him singing as well. Yeah. No, he's a good singer. He was a great. He was a great musician. Mel Torme, the great jazz singer, was a great drummer. Sammy Davis Jr., the great singer, tap dancer, was a great drummer. Steve Gadd, tap dances. I mean, it's all connected. These aren't different disciplines. They're different manifestations of rhythmic drive and musicality. But, we're all connected. All musicians are connected in many, many ways that we're aware of. And I think in some ways that we're not particularly aware of spiritually, connections and performing music together, which I think is, for me, being a musician, it was never about practicing and being in the practice room. I did woodshed a lot, but I never liked being alone. I liked being with other people. I liked the social component, and I liked the fact that you may have four musicians, but the sum of the parts is much greater than 1 + 1 + 1. But when you're really working together and it clicks, all of a sudden, that's when magic happens. And
Mhm.
I think it's kind of sad today. A lot of drummers just basically play the tracks in their home, and that's their music making. And to me, that never to me is not interesting.
Mhm.
I want to be with people. I want to interact with people.
Yeah, for sure. Do you get a feeling of spirituality from the drums themselves?
I do. Well, I wouldn't say from the drums, but from music, and whether that means I'm playing drums or I'm playing vibes or timpani or I'm playing. I play a good deal of piano. I enjoy playing piano. It's about there's something about the sound, that's particularly of a drum, that is so basic and so instinctive. It's the heartbeat. Everything revolves around it.
Hmm.
And it is, I don't know what spirituality really means, or that everybody's definition is different, but there's a connection. It connects you either to the universe or to the pulse of the universal rhythm, or with somebody else if you're playing together or trading fours or whatever. But it's the connectivity, whether it's to a person, a group, or the universe, so that really makes me feel connected, makes me feel really part of a whole that's greater than the sums of the parts.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I
It's
guess some
really
people might call that God. I don't know. It's a powerful thing, though. It's a powerful, powerful music. You think about the one thing that everybody in the world shares in common. We have different languages, we have different jobs, we have different things, but everybody, I'd say almost everybody in the world is listening to music all the time, and it moves everybody. It's universal. It's truly universal. Music just really, really um, connects with people in such a deep, deep way that it's almost impossible to understand the depth of how music can move people.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you said something along the lines of the drum being just such a basic, and I forget the exact word you used, but it's to me, the drums are almost the only instrument where it's like almost like we were designed to do it. We don't have to build our face muscles. We don't
Oh,
have
oh,
to.
oh, well, yeah, absolutely. Well, with kids especially, hand the kid an oboe and say, "Let me hear you make a sound," or a violin. But hand the kid a drumstick and go over to a drum. Now they may not hit it exactly the way you would or I would, or in a learned way, but they'll get a sound out of it, and
Mhm.
it's the heartbeat. That sound will grab them and pull them in. So it's primal. It's really
Primal.
distill. If we distill down everything around us and vibration, light and color, it's just that they're waves of frequencies of light is light frequencies, very high frequencies. Sound are lower frequencies, but they're part of the same spectrum. So when you get down to just a drum and a tom tom or a bass drum, it is so low, you feel it. That is the basis that everything in the universe is built on, I think. Going through sound and light and through the electromagnetic spectrum. We're talking about frequency vibrations, the difference between two colors is the wavelength of the light. The difference between an A440 and an A880, an octave above, is wavelength of sound. It's all part of a big, big, big system.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, man, that's some deep stuff.
Yeah, it's for a drummer, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah. Right.
Oh no.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm impressed when I can count to four. And
Yeah, no, I'll tell you a very quick story. I had a dear, dear colleague I was in school with here in Boston, and he passed away a number of years ago. And we had a memorial concert for him in a church that he used to go to. And there were 90 musicians who wanted to play. And I put it together. And we had 14 drummers playing rudimental stuff together. And it was amazing. And the minister came over to me at the end of the night. She said, I've sat in hundreds of these memorial services, but I've never experienced anything like this. The feeling, everybody coming together. How do you explain it? And I said, well, you have to realize that we're all musicians here in the Boston area. We work together. We spend hours together. We travel together a lot of times. we make music together, which really is a form of audible prayer. So if you think of us creating this great spiritual environment together, how we feel connected to each other. And then she got it. She never thought of it that way. She thought, well, you just play music. It's deeper. It's deep.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. I really do. That's awesome, man. So, hey, who's drum set player wise? Who's on your Mount Rushmore?
Well, it has to be Buddy Rich.
Hey.
I mean, technique, musicality, entertainer. I've heard a lot of great drummers, and I'm friends with a lot of great drummers, but he stands alone, Buddy. I mean, and part of that was the fact he started at 6 years old in vaudeville. He was called Traps the Wonder Boy. With his parents were vaudeville, and he really wasn't a learned percussionist. He took some lessons, I think, with Henry Adler in New York, but he just his technical ability is so clean and so unbelievable. I would put him in. There are others. I mean, I can name dozens of. I mean, Shelly Manne, terrific draw. I love his playing. A lot of different people. Steve Gadd, I mean, today modern Steve. So, but Buddy is just like Buddy to me stands on a pedestal by himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's funny when I was younger, I kind of thought, oh, he's just Flash and he's kind of a jerk, He's great and all, but not my cup of tea. And then I had a teacher set me straight. He gave me there's a monthly drummer magazine. Do you remember the name of
Modern Drummer?
It was Modern Drummer, and he gave me a copy of Modern Drummer that was just the Buddy Rich edition.
Right.
And the more I read and the more I listened, I got a bigger picture.
Just go on YouTube, type in Buddy Rich, and he had an arrangement of the West Side Story from the musical by Bernstein. It's phenomenal, and
it's uplifting, isn't it?
He was a showman and a drummer. That was his thing, but he could drive a band. It would swing like. He'd be playing along and then he'd go into a shuffle. It was like the swing in this. Oh my God. Talk about a pocket. Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. And I was listening to a compilation album. It was like Best of Buddy Rich, the Pacific Jazzers. Yeah. And that's, I think, the second track on it. Yeah, I was listening to that on the way to work, and I almost shed a tear. Like, that arrangement is just so uplifting. Like, obviously.
Yeah.
Like Bernstein wrote beautiful melodies, but that arrangement it just took it to another level.
Like Sinatra, he had the best arrangers in the business. He was smart. You listen to some of the great singers, the big band singers and the big bands, they all had great arrangers. They knew that, singing, playing, but if you get a great arranger, they're going to make you sound great. That makes a big difference. Yeah.
And he had that band.
Oh, yeah. He wasn't the easiest guy to work for. I have a lot of friends who were in his band. That's a whole other conversation. But, sometimes musical giants can be kind of difficult. I mean, I worked with quite a few of them who were incredible musicians. Bernstein's one. Not always easy to work with. Very demanding. But that's the business side of it.
Did you ever catch any fire from him? Do you have any stories about that?
Not directly to me, but I saw him get very picky with people in rehearsal. He knew what he wanted. And he had he sometimes lost his cool a little bit. I'm anxious to see the movie about it, Maestro, with Brad Cooper. But he was a genius. He not only was a phenomenal conductor, he was a great composer. He was a poet. And he was an incredible scholar. He used to give talks in New York at the New York Philharmonic when he was a conductor, called the Young People's Concerts. And he would deconstruct music for young people and talk about classical music so it wasn't seen as just some pristine thing on a jar, that he would actually take Beatles songs and say, now, if Mozart wrote I Want to Hold Your Hand, this is what it would sound like. If Bach wrote it, he'd talk about music in a much bigger sense, that really a scholarly way that was very interesting. And I think most of those are on YouTube. If anybody wants to hear the young person's concerts with Leonard Bernstein, phenomenal.
Yeah, just like Buddy, I think Bernstein might have been a visitor.
Yeah, yeah,
Not quite of this earth.
yeah. No, well, he had an interesting upbringing, and there's certain people that are born with incredible talent. And I came to Boston to study with Vic Firth specifically, which I did for 3 years. And I remember my first lesson with Vic. I got to school. I'm in my lesson with Vic, and I'm a little nervous. His first words to me said, "Talent got you this far. Perseverance is going to be what determines whether you're successful or not." And I took those words very seriously because everybody at school was talented. I mean, I came from my high school. I might have been the best percussionist there. But when I got to Boston, I was at the conservatory. Everybody was the best from where they came from. And so I had, I was competition. All of the sudden went from local competition to kind of world class competition.
Yeah, I have dozens of students, or I have, in the last couple of years, have had dozens of students that were so talented, but
Yeah.
because they weren't obsessed, they didn't
Right.
wake up and think about the drums. They either quit or got
Right.
kicked out, or it
Right.
doesn't take you the whole way.
Right. Right. And everybody's different. Some people just want to play to enjoy it, and that's fine. Not everybody wants to or should be thinking about turning professional. It's a very difficult, as you well know, it's a difficult profession. And if you're not really dedicated and willing to sacrifice, you may want to rethink it. But my brother's a very gifted guitarist. He just didn't want to do it professionally. That doesn't mean he's not a really good guitarist. He still plays. He's great, but he didn't want the pressure. He felt the pressure of having to make money doing what he loved might have tarnished his love for it. For me, it didn't. It fed into my drive because I knew I had to be better because I wanted to survive. I wanted to work. I wanted
Right.
to live. So, but everybody's different. It's just listen, if there weren't people out there who love to listen to music, you and I would be starving.
Mhm.
So they're important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Hey, what were lessons with Vic Firth like? What did you do over those 3 years?
It was incredibly demanding. He was very, very, I mean, I literally saw students come out of lessons crying because he was so tough. His attitude was, if you could get through studying with me, then you're going to make it in the field. But if you're not willing to put in 4 or 5 hours a day practicing, you're not going to make it through. And a lot didn't. He was an incredible teacher. He was an incredible human being. He was kind of like, in a way, like Buddy Rich. He was very unique in a lot of ways, incredibly talented, funny, and very supportive of his student. If he saw you working, he was behind you 110%. So I found the more I gave, the more I got.
Hmm.
And I had a very, very close relationship with him. I learned a lot. A lot of what he taught me, I really didn't get till like 10 years later when I was out playing professionally. I said, oh, yeah, that's what Vic was talking about. I mean, because it's such a high level when he's telling me things. I'm a student. I heard him, but I'm not sure I completely understood. And it was not the kind of thing he can explain. I had to experience it.
Do you have any examples of a situation?
Yeah. Well, he always talked about, with orchestras are a funny thing. Orchestra's it's like a big boat. It doesn't turn very fast. It takes a long time. So, you have a conductor up there giving you the beat. And I say, where is it? Where exactly do like violins can sneak in. I'm playing timpani. I'm either on or I'm off. Where is it? Where is the pocket? And he said, you got to feel it. I said, what do you mean you got to feel it? How the hell? How like? And he said, the only thing I'm going to tell you is don't be the first one in the pool. And I didn't know what he was talking about until I'm playing one day and there was a new conductor and he went like this and I reacted too quickly. And I was ahead of everybody in a rehearsal. Don't be the first one in the pool. So I laid back a little bit into, we talk about a pocket. Where is the beat? Well, it isn't one dot on a line, it's a space. And where do you place it? And if you want to move it forward, do you place it towards the front? And it was that kind of stuff that until I was out playing every day professionally, I really didn't grasp. It took a long time.
Mhm.
Once you get it, you understand. I understood what he was saying. You got to feel it.
Yeah. Do you feel a connection between the timpani and the drum set? Maybe not technique wise, but your role in the group?
Well, yes, in terms of rhythmic driving the rhythm, driving the rhythm, pretty much. They say the timpani is a second conductor, and with Vic, I saw that a lot because there'd be things, very complex things, and he was so self assured. You can't you can't be tentative. So in the same way, a drummer, you're playing. If you're not laying down the groove, if you're tentative, other people are going to be tentative. So I think in that way, yes. I never really thought about it that way, but timpani here in Boston is in the center of the stage in the back, and the drum set typically would be in the center of a stage with a group and people. People are listening, and it's a big responsibility because other people are relying on you for rhythmic precision. Now, in a real world, every instrumentalist should have great rhythm. Practically, that's not always the case. So I played a number of concerts here in Boston with the symphony where, like any orchestra, there's good and bad nights and things, you have different conductors. And I was in some concerts where rhythmically I kind of felt things, we're not exactly all together. And Vic would come in and it was like somebody took a whip, bang, and everybody came behind them. It was unbelievable. It was incredible. So I learned a lot by observing him. It was great that I got to work with him for many years because I had, after school, I had a lot of lessons on the professional stage just observing him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's that's a hard thing to teach. That's like something that only comes from
right,
putting
right.
those hours in.
And he used to say, "I'm going to teach you what works for me. That's
Mhm.
all I could teach you. It may not work for you. You're going to absorb what I teach you and what works for me, and you're going to have to figure out what works for you. But
Mhm.
before you
Mhm.
do that, you're going to have to play it the way I play it." And he was right on.
Yeah, I have some students that are either taking with another teacher or their band director tells them something that might kind of conflict with something I said. And I tell them, look, the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Absolutely. Well, I would equate it to baseball. If you watch Major League Baseball, there's a number of great hitters in the game. Hit home run, they're hitting tons of home runs. And when you watch how they hold the bat some up here, some down here, some they're all different, but they all get great results. So there's not a right and a wrong way, really. There are good principles you should employ, but just because I do something a certain way doesn't mean you have to do it that way. But if you observe and you share good principles, sometimes with students they do something completely different, and I'd ask them, "Why did you choose to do it that way?" If they could explain to me their choice and it made sense, great. If they just did it because they weren't thinking, I didn't like that. I said, no, no, you got to think about this. You know,
Yeah.
it, it's you can't take a chance.
Yeah, man. I tell kids all the time, like, you can do anything you want, but nothing on accident.
Right, right. And like a lot of things, Trey, it's you get out of it what you put into it. And practicing, I think practicing for too many people is a real chore. And I know as a kid I didn't like to practice. I learned to make up my own exercises and do things to help my practicing to make it a little more fun. And with a lot of my students, I tried to interject a little more joy and fun into the practicing routine, not just I'm doing it because I have to. I'm doing it because I want to get better.